We all have tough seasons in our homeschool. There are going to be those semesters, those years sometimes, that life is not going as planned, and that maybe your academic health or mental, spiritual, emotional health are suffering, or maybe all of them. Well, today I want to talk to you guys about some of the things that have been going on in our homeschool, but more specifically, what we are doing to pivot and change to be homeschooling well in the season that God has called us to. So let's get started. First things first, we had to make changes in how we homeschool. No, I don't mean we're changing from being eclectic homeschoolers to being unschoolers, or that we're changing from classical to Charlotte Mason. This has nothing to do with the method. It has more to do with sitting down and recognizing the season that God's called us to and what we have on our plates at this point that we cannot take off. Those things that God's called us to, and adjusting our homeschool to fit that season. For right now, just summarizing very quickly, I really can't get into all of it, but we have had some major medical hiccups that have happened when it comes to our family. I have had some health issues and had to start going to physical therapy all last semester. I had my oldest daughter, the one who typically is perfectly healthy, have some major medical things that have come up. We are looking for answers still, but having to drive and see different specialists, and even having to go out of state to do some of that, and still seeking answers. And of course, my daughter with medical special needs has ended up with new diagnoses like secondary hypertension, which means that has some other issue in her body that's causing these issues. We're currently in the middle of a bunch of tests to figure out if it could be her kidney or other problems. We've also had some major emotional health issues this year. My daughter with medical needs has been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and I've shared that before, but the anxiety has gotten worse and has required a lot more of our attention. It's taking daily focus multiple times a day just to do the exercises to help her to be able to regulate. And it has been definitely a challenge for all of my kids as we have walked over this past semester of walking through and caring for and getting to visit for my grandmother who is in her last days. All of this while my husband goes back to school part-time, while he is also working a full-time job. And so he is not as available all the time to jump in and help as he has in the past. This is a lot happening in the season, and frankly, what I'm explaining here is really just the tip of the iceberg. If you guys want to hear more about what's been going on, more of the details, more of all of the things, be sure to check out our podcast. We are going to be releasing season 3 of the Life the Mundane podcast coming out hopefully at the end of January, but there are 2 other seasons you can kind of catch up in the meantime, and we'll have more time to be able to share more of what's been going on. But when it comes to how are we changing how we homeschool, I had to recognize we're spending more time in the car now than ever. We're doing a lot more separate. We've always done a lot together, a lot of family style type learning, and we can't do that this year and in this particular season. I'm having to reprioritize and recognize that, especially for certain kids, mental and physical health has to come first, and then academics has to come secondary. And that means certain things have to go or to change, but we'll get to that here in a second. One thing I've had to recognize is my own human limitations. I am not God. I cannot be everywhere all the time. I cannot do all the things all the time. And honestly, even though I know that and I say that frequently, it still can hurt you as a mom and hurt your pride when you realize that maybe you can't homeschool in this particular season. Maybe that's not what God's calling you to do. And that brings me to change number 2. The second big change in our homeschool this semester is who I'm homeschooling. I will still be homeschooling 4 of my 6 kids, but 2 of my kids we are sending away. No, not to public school, and no, not to private school. Neither one of those were an option in this particular season. But as I recognized and realized that we needed to change how we homeschooled, and we needed to homeschool for the season that God had called us to, I realized that the area that I was really struggling with was with my 2 littlest ones. They're kindergarten and 1st grade, and they need a lot of hands-on attention. They need that one-on-one constantly, and they need consistency. My older ones are in middle school, and so they're able to do a lot more independently. And then my medical special needs daughter is the one who's always with me when I'm having to be out of the house and at appointments. And like I said, for her, we're just focusing more on physical and emotional health and fitting school in where we can. But I didn't want my little ones to have to suffer because of all of these elements. So as James 1:5-6 says, I took it to the Lord and I sought wisdom. If you're not familiar with the verse, it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it'll be given to him. But let him ask in faith, with no doubting. For the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. And I took this to God in prayer and said, I understand there's a problem here. My little ones need consistency and they need me to be there. But I also know that I have to take care of the medical and emotional needs of some of my other kiddos. And these two things conflict. And I know you're not going to call me to something that you didn't equip me for, that you haven't provided a way or an opportunity to do. So God, give me wisdom on how to handle the situation. And he did, in a really unexpected way. Because at the same time that I was praying about how to handle this and what to do, I didn't know that my friend Wendy over at Plan Prep Pray, if you guys don't know her, you should definitely go check out her channel. I didn't know that she also was praying for wisdom and asking God what she could do to help support our family, but also for some different things that she's going through in her homeschool. And I'll let her share more about that. Go subscribe to her channel so she can share her side of the story. But with this, I really was so thankful to hear that she called me one day and she said, this might sound like a crazy idea, but I just feel like I'm supposed to offer this to you. And I've talked to my husband, we're on the same page, and I would love to be able to homeschool your two younger ones and to just bring them in with her two youngest and to do sort of a family style classroom model with them and to be able to homeschool them alongside their literal best friends and to be able to take care of all of the math and the language arts and some of the other skills like that. So that all I would have to do is, if I wanted to, is bring them in on our history and science in the afternoons. And that has been such a huge blessing. So starting this week, I'm officially not homeschooling two of my kids. They will be going to Wendy's house several days a week for about half days. And that will allow me to be able to have more focused time here at home to work on some of the things that I need to work on with my other kids and to be able to make those appointments and be able to do those things when my kids are gone, my little ones are gone, so that when they're home, I'm able to give them more of my attention. I know some of you are going through seasons similar to what I'm talking about right now, and you're probably saying, Katie, that's great that you have a friend who doesn't live far away, who's willing to homeschool your kids for you, but I don't have that. And I want to encourage you that you may not have that. You might not know, because I never expected this either. But what you do have is you have a God who cares, and you can ask for wisdom, and he will give generously. So don't be afraid to ask. God has many outside of the box ways of doing things. And so he can give you that wisdom, whether it's a curriculum change or whether it's a method change or whether it's who and how you're homeschooling. Speaking of what we're using to homeschool and curriculum, that brings me to our third change. We're definitely making changes to what we're using to homeschool with. And I mean a couple of different things by that. Yes, curriculum overall, and stay tuned because next week I am going to be doing an entire video dedicated to just what the curriculum changes are, the specific curriculums that we're switching out, the modifications that we're making to some of our curriculum, and all of those details. But I wanted to explain more on a broad scale of what I recognized about having to change the tools that I'm using for homeschooling. I had to outsource more. Yes, sending the girls to Wendy's house is a huge outsource. But even with my older ones, there were curriculums that I was considering adding in for this next semester. There were changes that I needed to make where I needed to outsource even more of their things as well. So they were getting that attention, that they were having a teacher to actually instruct them, but it couldn't be me in this particular season. So we have done more online classes. We have modified to do some more independent studies opportunities for all of my kids that'll be at home. And I'm going to be sharing more about that next week. But I also recognized there was a need to simplify what we were doing. If you guys have watched my videos before, you know that I've talked about my A schedule, my B schedule, my C schedule. Those things that are like a perfect homeschool day, everything's going great. Those days in the middle where, that's probably gonna be the majority of your days where it's not perfect, but it's not bad. And then those C days when things are really rough, what are just those bare minimums that we need to take care of? I recognize that even my A days need to be more simplified. We needed to cut things out. We needed to have better backup plans for C days. In the past, it's always just been like, here's the subjects we're gonna do, and each next level was just a little bit less of the same thing. And I realized that C days might actually have to be a totally different plan, not just less of what we're regularly doing, but maybe a different curriculum or a different option. And I recognized that I needed to modify some of the things I'm currently doing. So just one example of this is our science time. I had originally been doing science. My 2 oldest boys are doing apologias, anatomy, and physiology by themselves. And then my 4 girls, who are 7th grade, 5th grade, 1st grade, and kindergarten, were doing the Apologia land animals unit. And we've been doing it via audio. I knew I had to make that adjustment as well, to me not reading aloud and to doing it on audio, but we were just going to do it in the car. What I learned last semester is, for various different reasons, which are too complicated to get into now, there's just been a lot less opportunities where we're all in the car together, the 4 of us girls, and where I typically actually have more time where it's just the 3 younger ones, where my oldest daughter is not there. So I needed to modify things. And so now she is going to listen on her own to the lessons, and I'm going to listen in the car with the 3 younger ones, and then we'll come together and discuss and do the science experiments together. So just making those modifications for the season of life is crucial. I would love to know, what changes are you guys making for this next semester? Let me know down in the comments. And if you want to know more about how to create an A, B, and C schedule, be sure to check out this video here.